start, because we start our meetings with a land acknowledgement. And if you are willing, my dear friend.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sarah Smith. I'm the co-chair of the Truckee Arts Alliance. I would like to acknowledge that we are holding this meeting and gathering together tonight on the lands of the Washoe tribe. And I'm incredibly grateful to be here. I'm incredibly grateful to see all of these faces, everybody who has shown up here to chime in. So thank you for gathering with us here on these beautiful lands that we are so fortunate to inhabit.
Thank you. I really want to thank Truckee Arts Alliance, as well as Truckee Artist Lofts. Let's see if I got that was the address there, for hosting us tonight. As we start, this is we're going to present some information and share about this funding that is available for each county, and we're going to share a little bit about the criteria that have been set forth according to California Arts Council. But we're as we go through all of that, I first want to start with having, if someone could read this first slide. Is anyone willing to read it? Thank you. And loudly for that outdoor voice.
Everything?
Oh, no, just experiences.
Okay.
Yeah.
Experiences, every other word. Experiences related to health are often factors such as environment, or arts, play critical and accessible role to play in tackling community conditions.
And there's no right answer. So what generally do you think? Do you think the arts play a role in these large-scale community issues?
And just a note from us Zoom attendees, if everyone could use their best outdoor voices today, we can hear Katrina loud and clear, but almost everyone else is muted. So big outdoor voices for us. Thank you so much.
All right, so well, luckily I'll be talking for a little bit, and then when we shift, I'm going to actually get everyone to slide in closer, especially those that speak, so closer to the owl would be great. California Creative Corps is an economic and workforce recovery pilot program, and we are, and you can, well, I'll finish reading it, but intended to fuel positivity, regain public trust, and inspire health and safety across California's diverse populations. So we are still, some would say we're coming to the end of a global pandemic. I'm gonna let our healthcare workers decide where we are in that. But I am, because now it's the flus and all of us have just gone through these holidays and seen this. But the fact is, we haven't experienced anything like this. The scale of the shutdown, the scale of the impact to our economy. Since the time of after the Great Depression, and at that time the Work Trades Program Administration was created, which was part of the New Deal, and it created funding on a lot of different sectors, but it actually employed artists as well to address issues across sectors. So this program now from California Creative Corps mirrors some of that. It's a pilot program, so we don't know if it'll be renewed. We will all be reporting as to the successes, and that's why we want really great projects that we can demonstrate as part of this program. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about this program. So in the spring, the grant will begin. So we're giving this heads up to all the areas so people know what the guidelines are likely to entail to start thinking about their projects. Nevada County Arts Council, through Eliza, who's on our Zoom, applied to be an administrating organization for this grant and received it for the whole upstate region. 60 million is across California, and then it was partitioned to the different regions. And this grant program is designed to increase awareness around water, energy, and climate disaster. So public awareness related to water and energy conservation, climate mitigation, emergency preparedness, relief and recovery, and definitely including fire, as we all know very well up here. Civic engagement, which they cite as election participation. We can also think about what else that might entail. Social justice and community engagement and public health awareness. This is how the California Creative Corps looks at California, divides it into different regions. You can see, of course, that some places only have 2 counties in their region, obviously because of population. Our upstate region has 19 counties. It's the largest region in all of California. And as you're going to see in some of these slides, it's probably the most diverse, I would argue, but you know, I haven't looked as closely at everyone else. The next biggest one is that purple area, and they have 15 counties. So there's many ways. That's how California Arts Council looked at that for the California Creative Corps. There's quite a few ways you can look at
11.
California. Huh?
11 counties in the second
Oh,
largest one.
it's funny, I counted 15, but we'll have fun with that. Okay. The California Economic Resiliency Fund is something that we're going to want to closely be collaborating with, thinking about, because there's opportunities for funding with that as well, in which it's divided. And in the upstate region, there's 3 different areas involved in that. And Eliza, do you want to share more about SURF?
Sure. So yes, I mean this particular slide just shows the many different ways of thinking about when we think about projects that we might want to propose come spring, when we put out the guidelines, the grant programs. These slides are really designed to completely inspire you in different ways. So for some regions within the upstate region, so we know that the Redwood Coast regions, those communities along that corridor, along the coast, that Del Norte, Humboldt, Mendocino, they work together, they communicate through the California Economic Resiliency Fund, as in the same ways that the North State communities, all of which are part of Upstate, communicate. So there are different ways of looking at possible regional partnerships as artists and as social service organizations and units of government. And of course, the map at the top is a historical map, a linguistic map of our first peoples from UC Berkeley. And I know that you best speak to that beautiful map that connects with watersheds, Katrina.
Yeah, well, I put this one up here because as we went to each county, I wanted to look at the relationships of each county with each other, especially as it relates to if a drop of water fell, where would it eventually flow on out? So we obviously right now where you are, specifically here in Truckee, we flow into the northern Lahontan Great Basin area. But right up your hill, right, you flow out through the Sacramento River region. It was amazing for us as we went up to Modoc County, which I had never been to up here. And you know, the different drainages, 3 different drainages for up in there. So, and also looking at the complexities, one of the last counties on our big trip up into the northwest side was Trinity County, which is deeply impacted by how much of their water is taken from the North Coast area and taken down the Sacramento River, and with big economic impacts residual for the county. So we wanted to understand how water flows. And of course, the highways, not only for us figuring out how we're going to get to each county and what makes sense, but also how counties are interacting with each other. So just looking at this, again, we're presenting this, and there's funding, and we can think of ourselves by the county we come from. But of course, thinking, I'm always an arguer that since counties do not follow watershed lines and everything like that, I think about a little bit more broadly about how you're connected to the areas around you. And you know that very well here in Truckee, of course, with your deep connection with Placer County. So as we looked at this region up here, there's 19 counties, as I said. So although we have 33% of total counties and 31% of total geography of California, we only have 4.2% of the population. This is a lot of why the voice for rural communities is something I'm going to really bolster here for us to really come forward with what really matters here, because a lot of what we're going to learn about is driven by these larger populous communities. So don't be deterred by that. But looking at this, we already talked about the hydrologic regions. We looked at the range of the counties, Placer County with the highest populace, Sierra County with only 3,000. They only have one census tract. Precipitation ranged from 14 inches a year in Modoc to where we were just in Del Norte, we're 95 inches a year. And then of course, the huge range in elevations and the different economic industries. So we just looked at this in terms of California, the upstate region overall. So through the California Creative Corps, Nevada County Arts Council is administering this grant, as I said, but working very closely with all of the 19 upstate counties. And here specifically working very closely with Truckee Arts Alliance. Thank you. And this is through the program of the state local partner program. And so through this work with each county, the goal is we're not coming in saying what's happening. We are completely working closely with the community, the existing infrastructure, the existing ideas and everything like that. So again, that's why coming on up over here made a lot of sense. So we're going to introduce this new tool, the Healthy Places Index. And then what's most importantly, we're going to identify the issues that are most important to Nevada County overall, but also this region overall, Truckee. And as we do this, then we're inviting the artists to help create this awareness and about these community issues and actually get paid for it because there is this funding.
And
So,
Katrina, if I might just interrupt for one moment, because we have the executive, a senior staff member from Placer County Arts Council with us, Patrick, and there's a reason for that, because we know that in terms of regional alliances, the Truckee-Tahoe area really is in many ways operates as one. So artists and social service organizations, units of government, arts councils, we all might want to be thinking together about how we can partner in a regional sense that makes sense. So think Truckee-Tahoe as well as just Truckee and Eastern Nevada County.
Yeah, definitely. So this is the Nevada County overall summary. So just your state local partner official is Nevada County Arts Council. And we did this kind of summary as we went to every county. So it's, here, familiar, Eliza has worked so closely up in both this side of the watershed as well as down on the western side. But this is what we did going into each county to understand. And one thing that that I actually want to encourage from all of you, running through and thinking about the local resource groups. And the reason, and this is the ... is simply an invitation. Please tell us who we are missing if you can think of anyone else, because the idea is this: if we're thinking about community health, we want to work with the various entities that are thinking about that already. We don't want to recreate the wheel. There are people that have been addressing issues all over the place with different topics. So who else might be partners? I'm really glad I twisted arms of friends to come on in here, because we put Sage-Hen up here and we can think about the academic institutions and students coming around. And yeah, so please tell us that.
It's the Donner Land Trust.
Great.
Yeah,
So
it's out there.
It's up there?
No.
Okay, great. Thank you. And actually, I realized I didn't start with something I really wanted to do, but just to have a sense of, because this also helps us understand how many, I'm going to ask, how many of you identify in different groups? Like, how many of you identify as an artist that are here? Right. Excellent. And how about people in social services? Yay! Yeah, you can have more than one. How about educators? Great. And people in public health? So quickly. And how about environmental groups? Oh, great. Okay. So it gives us the sense too. So when you're thinking about those organizations, this right now, this opportunity, especially the ability to collaborate with people that are working closely with these issues, for artists to have that access to that information and those insights is super important. So if you have any other ideas of anyone else who missed, thank you so much for that one. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's not an organization, but it seems like a pretty big potential partner for different projects are the local resorts. Because, and then there are also resort foundations, there's
Ski resorts, you meant.
ski resorts, but the ski resorts, they do have community impact programming and things like that, and might be really good partners for some.
Great.
Especially some of these
Great.
big things. I see that there's the school district, that's it.
Oh, for hospital. Foundation.
Great.
You have UCD Field Station in Browns Valley. UCD Field Station in Browns Valley. Someone, Susan Cook on Zoom.
This is Supervisor Cook, who is Supervisor, Nevada County Board of Supervisors. Sue, it's great to have you with us. And we'll make sure that we add that community resource to our presentation for Yuba County as well.
Yeah.
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 Truckee Roundhouse.
Roundhouse.
Yeah.
Slow food garden,
What's that?
slow food mentality.
Slow food.
Sierra Nevada Alliance.
Yes. Yes.
Sierra participants and Sierra Finance.
Great. This is so helpful.
Family Resource Center in Turkey is actually now part of Sierra Community House, so you don't need it.
Yeah, so food.
Yeah, totally.
Food hub. Yeah, the food hub, did you put that?
Great. Great.
Children's Museum. Oh, yeah, Children's Museum.
It was interesting. We put this question out to up in Humboldt County, and the woman, Leslie, who edited it, basically I ended up with an entire page of groups. That's how many groups we came up with up for Humboldt County. Yeah. So it can be continued, so you know. So I'd like you to be thinking about that. And Artist Valley Fund.
Artist Valley.
I don't have that there. Okay.
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 Parks and Rec.
All right.
Park and Rec, Friends of the Library, yeah, library.
Okay. Sweat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now there's a new organization that's going to be looking to protect Donner Lake called DIPS. And they're working with the Truckee Watershed, but it's a collaboration. Don't know.
And what is it, Donner?
DIPS, Donner Lake Interagency
Great.
Partnership, something. Anyway, yeah, I can look it up.
Yeah, great.
DIPS.
I'm going to give you a website at the end, and there's kind of citizens. So this can be continued because this is part of the nature. The guidelines will be coming out not until in the early spring. So, but it's great to know that these ahead of time and have this for people. We're going to be putting this presentation and it'll be available for people that were not here. And so the more we can make sure it includes the information that is most going to help people think about what they're inspired to work on. So when we go through the upstate region, we look at different issues. You know, as I said, this right here is, you know, as I said, this is where I'm putting on my little nerd piece. The part that I felt like this role that I really enjoyed getting to have was thinking about the landscape and what are the issues and how about that climate and energy and forest sector. And so this is a map that shows the last century of wildfires, and the green colors are the fires in the early part of the 1900s. And the fuchsia pink ones are the most recent fires. So anyone notice a pattern, a difference between the greens versus the recents?
Bigger.
Yeah, something we, yeah,
Yeah.
much larger scale. And of course, we've traveled through a lot of these areas, including we went through Greenville and amazing interactions with people, an entire town that burned down. And so what this invitation here is specifically about thinking about where we're headed over the next 50 years. If we do nothing, where might we be headed with a vision of what we might create? And so I was amazed to hear in Greenville, they actually rezoned their entire downtown. They changed what was going to be the business district, and they moved some houses to a different area, and they rethought their entire city by nature of the huge losses they endured. So it's like, we don't need to have a fire to be thinking about that, but when you're thinking about your projects, be thinking about in all the different arenas, whatever your passion is, whatever you think is most important to your community, where do you want to be headed? What could we do? What can artists do to convey that information or bring that awareness forward or move things in that direction? So this map zones in a little closer on Nevada County. I, again, in my little science hat, look at this and felt this constriction. Can anyone guess a little bit why, when we look at some of the other areas, why there might be some alarm looking at Nevada County area? Would you say?
We're ready.
It's gonna burn, right?
There haven't been many fires, have there? So that doesn't mean it has to be that way. Again, where do we want to head in the next 50 years? What can we do about it? How can we convey that information? I loved, by the way, how many resources we have online for getting this information right there. So I'm just going to say it's very fun to nerd out on these things online. So I'm happy to give links to any other fellow nerds. These are the specific fires. So it was just bringing them in and looking, and I looked at the larger region. It is not just about Nevada County. Fire does not know county boundaries, of course. So again, thinking more broadly. This I brought forward. It's right nearby here at the upper part. This is still Nevada County towards the edge coming into the North Yuba watershed. But I flagged the North Yuba Forest Partnership, where it looked at the current condition of forests, and you look at the density of forests and the historical snapshot. You know this well if you went to the forest fire exhibit up here, of course, which was amazing. But obviously the density of forest is something that we know is part of the driver of these large scale fires. So again, thinking about this is a project that is thinking about how we can reduce the density of forests to reduce the scale of those fires. I'm also going to flag something else when you look at this map. And this is one of the things I'm going to challenge all of you to be thinking about to give us this information. We've noticed in this indice we're going to show you, the Healthy Places Index, one of the metrics that determines health is forest density. Of course, we understand that there's an element, there's such a thing as too much forest density, right? So be keeping that in mind, that this is part of, we're going to give this feedback because a lot of these metrics are about urban communities, not about all of us. So other areas looking beyond county boundaries, county lines, these are in here just to flag, of course. Coming up here from Nevada City, we have that fun of zigzagging. We're in Nevada, oh, now we're in Placer, now we're in Nevada, now we're in Placer. You as well are living that up here. So thinking about the lake here, of course, that's a huge part of your life. Thinking about the Truckee River. So thinking about projects that relate to your watersheds and your elements, up here, building on them, addressing issues. I bring in, of course, the Yuba watershed too, because some of you up here might live on the other side of the summit. And so here we particularly brought this forward because the Yuba watershed encompasses 4 different counties. So the opportunities for cross-county collaboration. That also includes up here with the Yuba. I'm just gonna say, when I show you this piece of the data that drives the Healthy Places Index, we were down in Yuba and Sutter counties, and down there they have a lot of what's called dark blue tracts, which will explain. I'm giving away an answer to a question that I was going to ask, but either way, you can handle it. They have a lot of really unhealthy indices, and they were talking about kids that have never even seen the upper watershed. You're scared to go to the river. There are so many homeless people along the banks of the Yuba at the mouth where it comes on in. People just associate the river entirely different than those of us that live in the upper watersheds. What are ways we can bridge with our downstream communities, especially people within the Yuba watershed, and show them their upstream watershed, tie in more, feel more integral as a watershed unit? So again, these are all just invitations and a little bit of personal beliefs. So as we come into each county too, we look at the data to do with racial diversity, and we just ask that everyone really bring this awareness into your projects. Look at projects, look at who's living in the areas you want to do your projects. Look at who's not at the table as well. Overall, this is the summary for all of Nevada County, but I'm going to flag that for Truckee, the Latino Hispanic population is 30.2%. In track 12.06 in Truckee. Yeah, so one of the tracks right here. So that's pretty significant. So are there projects around that?
And
So
when
now, yeah.
And Katrina, if it's okay for me to butt in, when we say projects around that, what we really mean is, how can we work with our Latin population? How can we place our Latin population at the heart and give them voice within our within the projects that we're considering? I'm very grateful that you highlighted this particular demographic. It's fabulous. And of course, we have our Washoe tribal members who are still here. This was their land, is their land. And we know that they mostly reside across state lines. But again, their rich cultural heritage remains here. And how can we involve our Washoe folks as well?
Eliza. So we're about to go into this Healthy Places Index. I'm going to show you a summary of information right after this slide, and then I'm going to just show you live how to go into it. So, because I know you're dying to go home and open this up and just play around all over the place with the different tracks. But I really want to encourage, this is what the California Arts Council has guided the administering organizations to ask artists to use as part of their what would be the word, push towards some of the projects, some of the things, their incentive, maybe that was the word I was looking for. So this is the Healthy Places Index, and when you go to it, you can go to the map page, and it opens up. That's for all of California, and I gave this away a little bit, but normally the question is, what do you consider, what do you think the color is that indicates health? And of course, for many of us that have chosen rural life, we wouldn't necessarily see urban living as health, but it's about access to resources. So you're seeing a lot of the green around the cities, and the darkest blue is the lowest percentile. This is looking at various, you can do it by census tracts or counties. This happens to be a census tract conglomeration, but it's looking at the dark blue is the 0 to 25 percentile. So that means it's the lowest 25% of tract. It has the lowest scores in California, and there's 75% of tracts that have higher scores for the dark blue. Dark green is in the 75 to 100 percentile. So 75% of tracts have lower scores. So we're going to go into that, but before we do, for the upstate region as a whole, we looked at the overall data to understand, and obviously we went from that dark green for the Bay Area. We have a lot of dark blue in the upstate region. So we want to hone in and look at that. Again, with an invitation right now, we're not confined in any way. You could consider projects that tie in Truckee or Nevada County and Truckee to an entirely other region in the upstate region. You can think within California. So no bounds on this. I'm going to let you know we're going to primarily focus on the census tract data, because the census tract data is something that stays the same over time. It doesn't change. The only way it changes, if a county grows tremendously, they might split a census tract, or if it shrinks, population shrinks, they might merge two. But otherwise, it adheres with primarily my favorite thing, often watershed boundaries or permanent structures. Can't be gerrymandered, that's for sure. So this is a summary of Nevada County. Now, again, this is a average of all the tracts in Nevada County, but I'm just showing this here because we're going to do this live really fast. But this is how we score overall as we've gone into these other counties. We've had counties where a lot of those black lines, which is showing where the county lands, have ended up in the dark blue. How do you think Nevada County is doing overall? It's not that bad, right? So with each indice, though, you can open it up and look. These are actually what is measured for each area, each category. And you can find, I call it digging deep for the dark blue. you can open it up and find the areas where you can dig deep and go, well, what's that about? I want to understand. Again, looking at tracks tends to help more. This is an average of the county overall, but this is according to the Healthy Places Index, this is what they considers a healthy community. I'm really going to put this challenge forward as we've gone through 17 of the 19 counties now. I actually think, and Mendocino County put this out really well. They said, we're going to come up, one of the artists said, we're going to come up with our own healthy places, because these criteria, we like to be in rural places. We don't care about retail density. That's why we live where we are. So do not feel confined, but you can consider it to point to things, and all the more consider, what does determine health or what is missing. So I just don't want you to feel limited. I don't want any artist to feel constricted that they have to think about things that they really don't want to, but it still is a factor. The thing that matters most is what does determine a healthy community? What are those criteria you have? Anything else to add on that, Eliza?
No, I think you're doing a great job. So, I mean, essentially the message is California Arts Council want us to fund projects that positively impact communities suffering the worst health inequities in all these areas, but based upon those 4 program goals of civic engagement, social justice, climate mitigation. And so it's a sort of peculiarly complicated in one way, almost esoteric challenge that we're issuing to artists, because we're asking you to, on the one hand, use the Healthy Places Index as a way of looking at the relative health of our own community here in Nevada County and our surrounding areas, but also to bear in mind those 4 program goals, that connect these issues that we know to be absolutely critical to society, whatever the Healthy Places Index says. And this is where we have to marry what the Healthy Places Index says with our own lived experiences. So at any given moment, we want you to challenge us and to say, hey, wait a minute, that's not what we experience. I know that when we shared with Jen Calloway, our town manager in Truckee, what the Healthy Places Index said about Truckee and housing, Jen said, but that's actually not true. Housing is awful here. We have a real housing crisis, and we know that. Everyone in the room understands this. So we want you to challenge us, because we will be feeding back to the California Public Health Alliance, who created this data-driven map on what we're seeing in terms of lived experience in local communities.
Great. So I'm on the slide that's showing the summary for Nevada County. Again, this is averaging the entire county, but it still can lead to thinking about different areas. One thing that stood out to me specifically, having looked at a lot of these different counties, is the incredible wealth disparity, right? From 25,000 average, the low per capita income, up to 62,000 up at Tahoe Donner. So again, just thinking about this range, and again, as it's averaged, it can change, that's not the numbers that matter so much. So we're going to go in by tract and look at these. All of the Nevada County tracts are under the 50th percentile for ozone scores, which I know down in Grass Valley, Nevada City, we're very familiar with issues around ozone coming up from the Bay Area, the air pollution from cars, and I just remember how many times I'd leave my kids indoors. Yes.
Does the healthcare access also relate to mental health or just physical health?
Huge important thing, and how they exactly determine. I'm going to open it up and I can show you. But yeah, no, it's a great question, and again, I will share that as we've gone through the different counties, that has been a very important flag. This is based on 2020 data. A lot has happened since then, right? So there are a lot of communities deeply concerned about mental health issues. So, so I am going to shift now into, we'll see if it brings up. Okay, good. We were messing around with this before. This is, I went in the map. I was going to show you how I did it, but either way, I opened up the map. I'm gonna see if I can get rid of the thing on the left. There you go. And what I can do is I can go to various tracks. And so here we have Nevada County. I could show you the county overall. So there's different areas you can do it. You just saw county summary data. And you know, there's a way that it's an averaging of a lot of different tracks. We rank overall, that 73, we're pretty close to the dark green overall as a county. But I'm gonna go back to the tracks. And I'm first going to ask you, because we're here in Truckee, I would say in the Truckee area, our lowest tract is this large one that connects our two sides of the watershed. But if you have a particular interest, I'm going to show you a little bit just how this works, with just the encouragement that you can use this to guide information in your projects. I'm going to show you some of the language you could actually put into your grant proposal. So does anyone have a particular interest in any of these Truckee tracks that you would like to know more about? Anyone?
Why don't we make it that
This one?
Yeah.
Okay. So although this one's light green, this is what I was talking about.
I'm so sorry. Which one are you looking at? Track 9?
Yeah, 12.06.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Are you running? Oh, you're running it on there. That's awesome, Eliza. Thank you. She's running the same thing on the Zoom. So when we go in, you can open up. So all I did is I went to the economic, I opened it up. There's the different pieces here. Is there a particular area you'd like to know more about of these? Anyone have it? Environment. So when you open it up, and again, I'm going to flag our tree canopy. Oh, that's for neighborhood, actually. It's tree canopy, excuse me. So when you open it up, you can look at each one has then a sub tab that you can open it up. Your ozone scores are better than your lower county friends. See, the county average is 12.5. So we went to environment. We're looking at ozone. But what I just want to show you as you go down, it tells you what it measures and how it's connected to health. And so it says when ozone levels in the air are high, it can cause lung inflammation and more serious respiratory issues. Prolonged exposure to high ozone levels can increase the risk of cardiovascular and respiratory diseases, poor birth outcomes, and premature death. So a lot of this information is here. It shows you comparing the county to the state overall. And you can think about, you know, if you brought more awareness on an issue, what would that entail? Someone asked about healthcare access, and I'm going to flag on this one. Here we dig deep, we find the dark blue. So you can open that up again, and you can find the language here about what it measures and what its connection is to health, about access to healthcare. So rather than reading through all these, because it's way more important to hear your ideas and go further.
I'm curious about something though.
Yeah.
Considering that housing is
Yeah,
a
let's look at-
desperate issue here,
Yeah.
how is it rated so highly? So what are they actually measuring? I'd
Yeah.
like to see that.
Yeah.
2020.
So here's
Oh,
the,
it's 2020, but yeah, but
Yeah.
what is it?
Well, 2020.
It's been a problem.
It's been a problem longer than 2020.
Yeah.
Nobody's because a lot of the labor here lives in winter.
So how do we account for that? I'm just kind of curious, like what is it that, so it's
How are they measuring it?
home ownership?
so home ownership, housing habitability,
Habitability.
low income homeowner severe housing cost burden, low income renter severe housing cost burden, and uncrowded housing.
But ownership is even difficult here because it's second home.
Right,
So
right.
they really can't count as the community
Right.
that lives there.
The labor that live in Reno, they cannot afford to live here.
Yeah.
So the question is there in that data information about how many people commute every day from out of county?
I actually, when you were sharing about how many people live in Reno, I will point it out.
So it would only be the people answering the
Yeah.
census tract. So you won't get the community information.
It seems like,
This is not a good measurement.
I mean, you can
Yeah.
capture,
Well, you can capture who votes here, because that means you're a permanent resident.
We don't have to.
That would eliminate
It's
some of the second
never-
house.
and I will show you this social score. I noticed this, the census response rate for this area was the 2.6 percentile. So again, just bringing forward, we're showing what we were guided as a tool to use. And again, hands on the ground data is what matters the most. You know what's happening here. You know people are living in Reno, that there's not enough housing availability. The point is this: think about how your projects can tie in with the issues that are most dear and needed here in this county. So, and articulate, you know, although yes, maybe this tool says this, here's hands on the ground, you know, the experience. Because obviously, you know, with a lower census response rate, I, having done minimal statistics, would wonder a little bit what's being captured. I'm not trying to throw this out, by the way. There's a lot of things that's highlighted that have been incredibly useful. Like really, communities have said, oh my gosh, completely our issues. So again, we trust you to know what your issues are. So I was just gonna say, as I said, this nearby area here, so you can actually flip between counties. So if you have one indice that you're really curious about, like say education, and here it's low high school enrollment, and you can move county to county and you can see how it relates from different areas. Sometimes there might be collaboration that could be involved. What is working in one area where it has a really high school enrollment and another area where it's really low. So I don't want to, unless you have questions and you really want to see more on this, I want to, the only other piece I wanted to highlight is we are up here in the area. We are in this Truckee River watershed coming out of Lake Tahoe. I want to flag your Placer County neighbor here, this dark blue tract here at Kings Beach. Now, a lot of these areas, this striped pajama area, how I love how Liza says that, these are what are called exclusion zones. In these areas, it's because the population, the full-time resident population, is less than 2,500 people. And so they can't draw enough conclusions. So it's excluded from the data. In areas up in Lassen, there's areas that are excluded because of a really high amount of prisons, and thus prison populations or dormitory style living. So, but Kings Beach was not excluded and has the lowest scores for all of Placer County. So I'm just bringing this forward, and we, in our meeting for Placer County, learned more about some of the issues around education, some of the issues around the Kings Beach area because of people leaving and because of the kind of resources that are left available. I was surprised because most of the upstate area have really low, for dark blue tracts, low employment, 99.6% employment in Kings Beach. Mm-hmm. So obviously so many of these people are working within the industries here. Is that related to why we're seeing low education? Again, linking and understanding what's happening in your community and what can artists do about it. Mm-hmm. Anything else you might want to see on this before we go on and finish?
Kings Beach housing.
Housing.
Yeah. And bear in mind that that has actually changed quite a bit in the last 2 years. That's my community, by the way. I live in Kings Beach.
All right. Yeah. Yeah.
There's been massive turnover of former rental housing being sold off because the market was so high. Everybody just failed. Mm-hmm. And so a whole bunch of people moved up from other places. And it started in the 2010s when with the basically the economic crash, housing prices dipped significantly, and then a whole bunch of people that still had money basically came in and bought it all up and turned it into Airbnbs, and you know, a lot of the long-term rental properties went away, but almost all of it went away after the pandemic, because everybody came up to live in their homes that had been second homes, and that they might have been renting long-term, or they sold them. And so there's been huge turnover. So the data that we have from 2020 isn't going to necessarily apply, but it's worse.
Yeah. I don't know the percentage, but Kings Beach has a big Latino community.
Very.
And there is a lack of, bilingual services or just including diversity, everything.
Yeah, and right here, you can go right down, and 33.6% Latino in Kings Beach. So
It's probably more.
It's
There's a
more
lot of,
than that.
I mean, everyone's gone underground because.
according to census data, according to census data, I guess.
And
Yeah.
if you consider how many people are responding to the census,
Sure.
especially in 2020.
Sure.
Yeah, especially in 2020.
So again, thinking about projects, is there a project around highlighting the Latino community that could come forward? So there's, again, this is just like bait, right? So I'm gonna go back to the presentation unless there's anything else, but I do encourage, you're gonna have all these links that are written here. But I do encourage you to just play around with it. It's interesting. I, as someone who care deeply about, well, how that.
So you're saying if you apply for these grants, you need to include some of the language and data that's in this?
Or you need to articulate about community health, and you can use this as a tool. You can use some of the language with your own experience, your own argument as to what determines, you know. So you don't have to buy into what you're being told here. I'm just saying but you can use it to guide you, and you can use it to explain why you know that this matters, of course. So, Eliza, right? You'll.
Absolutely. Okay. We will want you to refer to this, and we'll want you to challenge it if you feel that the data that we're asking you to comment on doesn't properly represent what you understand to be the community conditions within the Truckee Tahoe area or any regional area that you are interested in partnering on a project with. So as one person recently said to us in one of our listening sessions, and we're actually on I think our 19th listening session tonight. We've been around the whole of the upstate region, learning from communities more than we're actually sharing, which is the whole idea of a listening session. But in a couple of places, folks have said to us, where's the heart in this data? And that's where you come in. We want you to bring the heart. And then, you know, that old adage about, you know, create a proposal that's both proving your point through data, but also that the qualitative heart of your narrative will be what we're really looking at too.
So as I said, there was $60 million for the state of California for this pilot program that hopefully will be something that could become ongoing, because we're all just going to have the coolest projects and so many things where we just want this to continue so much. There's like $3.4 million in direct funds for the Upstate artists that will go directly to artists. So this could be divided into each county, but instead we're thinking about, because we are so diverse in our populations by county, our geographic size, and once again, the concept that why do projects have to be based by county? How about regional issues? So this is a summary of some of the factors that we have been brainstorming could determine, you know, how funding is apportioned for different areas. So it could be the amount of blue tracks and looking at overall community health, looking at population, geographic size, tribal and ethnic considerations. The overall proposal strength obviously is going to be a huge factor. The longevity and sustainability of a project. So beyond this pilot program, is this something that would be easy to continue on with? The ability to apply these kind of projects to other areas, sort of as a model for other counties and other regions. The options for cross-county collaboration as well as mentoring. Again, in an area that has a lot of dark green, this is super important and awesome for Truckee to consider. Are there areas where you can obviously work with other communities? And then this is a key one we've learned going on that we added as we were traveling through, community conditions that are not captured in the 2020 census. You've experienced a huge one of the housing influx up here. Plumas County and Greenville, the town of Greenville, you look at it on the census data, I mean, it's gone now, right? So there are a lot of issues. What are some of those things that are not captured? Yeah.
I have a question because I just have an idea. One of the issues that, I mean, I've talked with another artist who's worked with some marginalized groups of kids, trying to get them into the outdoors, especially from urban environments. So is there a possibility to collaborate across regions as well? So for instance, can we partner with the Bay Area and their, you know, whatever they're doing there to try to say, for instance, create these collaborative programs that are engaging populations that may not have access to upper watersheds and nice, you know, lush green trees. And, you know, so is that something that's possible within this program?
Yeah, no, I'd say absolutely. And right, Eliza, that's where, I mean, I don't think they articulated clearly anything that limited that. And that seems like a huge factor.
It's a question that I'm so sorry, Trina. Is it okay if I pitch in here a little?
No, I wanted you to.
Wonderful. So this is a question, and again, as we listen to communities, we're gathering questions that we need to pose to California Arts Council. So there are 14 administering organizations across the state, and there are also 4 administering organizations who are not responsible for one particular region, but responsible for administering funds in the millions across the entire state. So I'm thinking that California Arts Council's answer to that question, Sarah, would be find one of those organizations and connect with them and ask them about that. We are also going to ask, and also we will be convening as administering organizations, we'll be convening together before we all publish our grant guidelines and our applications become available. So we'll be asking these questions among ourselves. So this is really great because I've recorded that.
Can you describe the parameters of what a project is? Because I'm sort of like, it's like, what are the deliverables? Are you looking for a physical piece of art?
Well, that's where,
or are you looking for like outdoor adventure clubs, or what's in and what's out?
do you want to do that now, Eliza, or do you want to, the question was describing the parameters,
Absolutely. And again, so this is where we really we're literally at that stage in our listening session where we turn it over to you. There was one other slide beyond this, which is where we look at, what size grants should we be offering, micro grants for singular artist applications versus high impact grants for major projects across regions within the upstate area. And then, that sort of thing. But in terms of your question, Katrina mentioned a federal program that began in the midst of on the heels of the Great Depression and ran through to the middle of the Second World War, the WPA, the Works Progress Administration, under which Roosevelt created 4 programs, federal arts programs in 4 different disciplines. There was music, there was theater, there was literary arts, and there was visual arts. And these visual artists were previously unemployed, and he put them to work, and he put them to work for public good. He put them to work to create vast, systems of murals to beautify areas that had been laid bare. He created among the literary artists a challenge to create whole tour guides of whole states or regions or counties. So the most amazing literature about America comes from that period, and the books, you can buy them today. I actually did read up a lot about the WPA recently, and I ordered some books. And when the books arrived, I noticed that a couple had been published with an introduction by the former chair of literature and theatre at the National Endowment for the Arts, the NEA. And I happen to know this guy well. And so I've contacted him, and he would like to lead a Zoom meeting for all literary artists, for example, and theatre professionals across the upstate region, that's 19 counties, to have a whole brainstorm around the kinds of projects that, for example, theatre professionals, whether actors or technical staff, whatever, lighting designers, and literary artists, including perhaps journalists, can create, how to make the WPA experience, how to bring it up to speed with contemporary issues and contemporary concerns using those 4 areas that we talked about earlier. So again, from community to community, different projects will make sense. Like when we were in Modoc County in the high desert, you know, it can be pretty desperate up there. But there's a beauty to it. And what we realized up there was how important a sense of pride of place was, and how important murals were to that. And in some more sort of urban communities, other forms of art can exist and can thrive. We welcome it all, and this is where we really turn to you and say, come on, like, share some of your ideas, be brave, and let's think about this. Because the more we hear from you, the more we can advise other communities. You're not in competition with one another at this stage. So it's really great if we can do some cross-pollination. So tell us what you're thinking.
Yeah, and so that's what we're going to open it up to, of hearing some ideas, things you'd want to see here. But I wanted to let you know that that the Nevada County Arts Council will be helping, and so will Truckee Arts, working with Truckee Arts Alliance and other communities with grant writing workshops, as well as encouraging, helping make linkages with social services or different people. We noticed in some areas that some artists were so overwhelmed that they were like, you're expecting me to think about this? Basically, it was like, you're killing my art. And someone else, like, I can't think about this. And it was looking, and it was amazing. In Mendocino, there were people that started right then in the group partnering of how they could create a team for a project and who could do what pieces. And this is why I steal my friends, just there are people that know a lot about these issues that can bring it forward. And what matters most of all is, like, unless there's other thoughts, I think right now I'm going to show you these links. And again, this presentation will be available, different links. We're going to have more information available about when the grant guidelines are coming out, as I said, in early spring, and other information, what these different workshops, there might be workshops around issues about regional fires and what might be done, and people brainstorming ideas there. Who knows what is going to evolve, but staying involved with tracking that on these different pages. But most of all, this is where we want to hear, what are the issues that matter most? Anything goes right here. And rather than breaking up in small groups, unless you would like to, I was going to say, I'd like to just hear the ideas, take notes. What are some of the issues you most see that matter the most? And what are some ideas? People just throw out ideas of, like, what are some ways we could do it? You ask about, these different collaborations with getting kids on out there. Let's hear about some of this. And I welcome other ideas of what you'd like to see happen here right now, or an invitation as well. Yeah. And so, and I was just saying, and if you're sharing, I just ask that it's really loud so it can be captured for the people on here. Eliza, did you want to add something?
Yeah, no, I have an incredibly valid comment from someone who's with us on Zoom, who says, this is all way too big a picture. You all get paid to live in this data, and it all seems so out of touch with listening to the community. I want to apply for lights and grants for individual artists that live here. Right, so Sarah, there is a grant program that's called the Individual Artist Fellowships, which you can apply to if you are an individual artist. And there are many different grants that California Arts Council, who administers this grant as well, offers that are different. But this one is an incredible workforce development and recovery program that comes straight from the state, that also puts money in the hands of artists to put artists to work, but it is specific. It wants to attach the work that you do with issues that are critical to society. It is a big picture. It is complex. We do have to share this stuff, but then we challenge you to make it real. And that's why we invited to this listening session, not just artists, but social service organizations who have a lot of vision and expertise, and units of government that can buddy up with artists, and together, artists have their own vision and their incredible capacity to share stories and narrative. And then we have organizations that can help that artist find a groove and create a picture in partnership. So for some artists, they'll be happy going it alone, maybe creating a residency for themselves, with one organization, or just completely going it alone and proposing a particular project that shines a light on an issue which is meaningful in Truckee or Eastern Nevada County, and others will want to partner with organizations. I hope that helps. Do you want to take Sarah off mute so that she can speak?
Yes, one moment, Sarah. Here we go. Go ahead, Sarah.
I'm a resident, Artist Lofts, and this is a new birthing organization, and we are looking for ways that we can, as artists who live here, contribute. Many of the artists who have moved into the Artist Lofts are not from this region. They're from different parts of the county, Auburn, from different areas. So there is a lot of cross-cultural involvement, or cross-county involvement. I lived 20 years in Incline, another 5 years in Kings Beach, and now I live here at the Artist Lofts. So there's a lot of potential here. And so I was told that this meeting was a meeting where the Council for the Arts would be listening to what needs were as artists in the community. So it may have been misrepresented to me as what this process is really all about. So thank you for listening. Thank you for clarifying.
Sarah, don't go away. If you have, I mean, we're in the Truckee Artist Lofts for a reason tonight. There's a density of artists here. We hope that together you will dream up an amazing project. Why don't you start that conversation? Throw out an idea that you've been having as you've thought about this.
The problem with Truckee Artist Loft community is this is all too premature for our community. We are trying to touch base with just our community, and there have been some real delays in our ability to do that. And because of that, we are fledgling as a cohesive group. It'll be another 6 months before we're able to throw out any ideas. There is many of the artists who live here now have come with a lot of talent and a lot of desire and a lot of potential. But at this moment in time, we are trying to just get to know who we can team up with. And many of the people here have experienced in Truckee an us or them thing. So here we are just trying to fit into the Truckee community. And at the same time, you're asking this big picture for inter-county projects. Just throw out a project. I mean, I can't do that
actually,
with.
Let me clarify so it's not. That was an idea of cross-county. So I think that I'd actually like to encourage, because there's some people in the room who'd really like to share. I'd like to encourage and hear about some of the ideas of projects that aren't even cross-county. What are some ideas people have right here of things that could happen? So yeah, could you want to?
Yeah. So this is reminding me of a project that.
Could you be louder even just so they can? Yeah.
It's reminding me of a project that Allison Fleming has done in Arizona. And she did a project maybe 15 years ago where she combined poets with climate scientists. And the project idea was to get the poets working with the scientists to create the emotional attachment to the data, right? So that people could actually feel and understand what was going on. So as I'm listening here, I'm thinking, well, that's kind of an interesting parallel when you said, how do we connect with the real on the ground experience? That's something that artists can do. And then I like the idea that you said here of partnering with people from other sectors, right? Someone from health, or someone from social, or someone from education. And then it's a little bit of a team doing that together.
Great.
One thing that stood out to me.
Yeah. And I saw your hand up right away. Do you still have something?
Me?
The woman in the back.
Oh, I have a general question about that.
Okay.
But I don't want to derail the project flow.
Yeah.
People have a new project.
Okay. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, let's see. Any other ideas of some projects? What's an idea of some projects with housing such a big issue? Is there any ideas of?
Well, I was thinking that I don't. Oh. Is it good?
Eliza.
Yeah.
Again, I don't want to go back to Sarah, but I'm really feeling I'm really wanting to both kind of acknowledge the extraordinary moment for Truckee Artist Lofts in terms of its kind of birth into the community during such an impossible moment as a global pandemic. And also, mixed use, affordable, transient oriented housing is such an extraordinary thing to have in a rural community, and yet both communities and artists need to be need to sort of learn how to live and work together. So I so understand this. I'm also thinking all of us as human beings, we're never ready for the next thing, are we? And it's only by sort of pushing ourselves into that sort of slightly uncomfortable space where we feel we're not ready for it because the opportunity is there, that we actually go to the next level. And I'm thinking, like, if I were an artist in Truckee Truckee TAL, that perhaps something like a mural project to help the community sort of understand that Truckee Artist Loft is alive and well, and that there are artists living, and look, they're working together. So there are simple things that might be able to be achieved. Don't be overwhelmed by the size and scope of projects that are also possible within this grant opportunity. There's a wide range, and I encourage you to think on a level that both challenges you and which is sort of not impossible for you either.
Yeah, and I also, the one element, we've heard housing has been an issue in so many places, and it's amazing, places that I wouldn't have expected, but hearing the scale of housing issues and problems for people in Quincy and in Wairika, I mean, it's absolutely amazing how little housing there is, and there's vacant buildings all over, and that luckily the city manager came and was looking at issues around what are some things they could do with some of the vacant buildings. And so thinking about projects where you have a community that's pretty darn mobile and able to look at those as something that could be a model for elsewhere. Thinking about, when I encourage the partnering, part of it is it's a huge luxury to have so many people willing to consider other viewpoints, and some counties don't quite have the scale of progressive thinking that exists in other areas. So again, yeah.
Can you give some examples of maybe some housing issue projects that you've heard?
Okay.
I was just going to mention this because it's
sort of
stealing. Sorry, it's sort of stealing from an ongoing project down in Reno, but it's a collaboration.
Is it stealing or?
Yeah. Or it's not really, it's just a general idea. But I can't remember what the organization is, but it's low-income housing organization collaborating with the Nevada Arts Council, and they are putting out some call to artists to come up with some ideas for a plot of land that they want to make into a community garden, but also as an art space. And so having the residents of this low-income housing apartment building collaborate with artists on this space that they have going. And they want it to be an ongoing thing. So community garden plus different art projects that can begin from that. So I think that collaboration between some of, the affordable housing groups that we have in this area as well, and that would be perfect for like the residents of the artist lofts as well, I think, to sort of facilitate other populations that don't have access to the arts, but they can create a space within their community.
Yeah, great. Andy.
So I can't speak to the art itself, but I can speak to a need in this part of the world. We don't have a center for the arts. I know that there are plenty of folks that think about this and talk about this. I think a couple of really important components here is you've got the 80 corridor, which is the east-west corridor for this country. This is an amazing cross-section of people come to this area, plus you have a lake. So there's been conversation about having a lake center that's analogous to places like the Great Lakes or places like Lake Champlain, the Echo Center. So we don't have a place where artists collect. And so it's one of the reasons why there's a disparate feeling in this artist community. I think if we had a center for the arts, that's sort of that Truckee, Kings Beach, Tahoe City, Nevada City, Donner Summit, right? Sort of place this like basically sort of like Mart is sort of prime for it, or top of Mart is sort of down in Kings Beach, but like, this is a 9-figure type of idea, but maybe we can leverage this and get some other big players and create a space. And once there's a space, I think it's easier to think about what to do with it.
The roundhouse is sort of. It's true, but
Acre space and it's different, but without having, in my opinion.
the closest thing that we have.
Well, without having a singular dedicated space, there are other options that might fall within this, things like pop-ups, and organizing a series of pop-ups in vacant spaces. And so then that actually coordinates the artist community with the business community, with potentially the industrial community and the airport and things like this, and having community events that are potentially centered around maybe a theme, or simply giving artists an opportunity to come together and put together a show. I mean, we used to do this on a guerrilla scale over in Tahoe City like 10 years ago. So, and we would just take over a space and pop up a gallery. But, it's just another model, and it's something that's been done a lot in a lot of different ways. So it's almost kind of, it can also engage the literary community in doing write-ups for it. It can engage the culinary community in creating some kind of a, one of the events could be like, say, a community potluck, but with a spin. It can be themed around bringing together communities that might not always come forward. So how do we...
but also we can do something.
Yeah.
I'm gonna, sorry to cut you off. I'm being asked to invite Patricia Egan to speak here. She is a member of the Truckee Artist Alliance as well, and she has a suggestion. Go ahead, Patricia.
Thank you so much for hosting this via Zoom. Was totally inspired by this listening session, and as a Truckee Artist Lofts resident, I'm keenly aware of some of the climate and environmental issues directly around us. Just like Sarah Horton, I lived at the lake for some years. I was in Tahoe City, and a neighbor friend I had there studied the ground here around the rail yard, and it's known as, just water scientists like her, as a brown field. It's kind of partially kind of a mixed bag, if you will, of pollutants. And the Trout Creek has a long history of pollution that runs through the rail yard. It would be great if we could partner with the Truckee River Watershed Council and do some kind of Trout Creek restoration, maybe paint a mural of some kind of protective barrier or other things to protect fish or wildlife in that area. We have a lot of pride here at TAL, and a lot of people representing all kinds of communities. In addition, I just want to throw in the idea that Outdoor Afro is an East Bay, Oakland award-winning based nonprofit that brings kids of color to the wilderness. And I would love to partner with them with TAA. And I'll take my comments off. Thank you.
Great. Do you want to finish what you were saying?
Love it. What Sarah was saying, maybe to have something like the visitor center that we were talking about.
Yeah.
You know, like to support the local artists. We can sell merchandising only from local artists.
Yeah.
And also I want to share, I used to work for the Children's Museum long time ago, and we did a lot of Latino outreach. When I started working there, it was zero visitation from the Latino community. And we did a program, and in about 2 years, we increased it in 500%. And at that point, anywhere, it was like kind of rare, you know, and now it's around, I would say 75% of the visitation is Latino.
And she wanted to work because she did.
All right.
No, but this was a long time ago, like 12 years ago.
Yeah.
But there is ways to outreach the community.
Well, and one of the key components to that program, though, because I was there at the same time, was the transportation.
Yes.
You know, we provided transportation. And so one of the indices was showing that, you know, access to transportation, public transportation is low.
Especially for low income families.
And something else that she shared, the way to attract people is really hard when you say, you want to come and see the art that Sarah gonna pay and gonna teach you how to do it. No, we have food. And people go.
Exactly.
So you need to know the community.
Right.
So let's say it was a super white community. I hope it's right there. They do it on Monday. You can see football. But if it is more Latino, let's do tamales. So you know, you need to have the bait for the right audience.
And our community is 30 to 40% Latino, you
I
know?
would say more.
And so we've got to involve a lot of the Latin community somehow, you know? And we have the transportation. Look, this year we have the transportation, was free transportation. I didn't use it. Did anybody use
Oh,
it?
yeah.
Oh, really? They've increased.
Yeah.
I used
So
it
we
once.
do have it.
I used it once, 2 years ago.
No, yeah.
Yeah, nobody really
What
used
is
it.
it? What was it?
Charge
Connect. Yeah, Charge Connect. So
So,
that's
so
free.
here's an idea. What about making art cars that are also transport to our events? Just saying,
Yeah,
you know.
that's cool.
That'd be fun.
Like can be like your own kinetic race. Okay, sorry.
Ooh, the kinetic
Jumping on
race.
the transportation.
Can you go a little louder?
Oh, jumping on the transportation issue, I'm Nancy from Trails Vistas, and we offer art hikes and then offer art hikes for third grade students. And we usually serve about 11 schools, all third graders, to go out to Santa Barbara or down State Park this year. And 2 of our schools that they didn't have a means of transportation to get out to the parks. And so, and those were the Kings Beach elementary school kids and Tahoe Lake. So we're actually taking our art to the kids next week with some presenters from the Washoe tribe. But I really think the magic happens getting the kids out to the parks. And so transportation after COVID definitely was a huge issue because the school district didn't have enough bus drivers to take the kids out there. And so
Related to the housing issue. Related to the housing issue.
Yeah.
Gosh, imagine, things are connected, really?
So that's really, you know, the working families in Kings Beach Elementary School, they couldn't have, you know, they don't have the luxury of taking off the day to drive their kids to the parks. So that's a big problem, a big issue that we would like to help, as anyone would like to collaborate and have some ideas to get the kids back to the parks.
What about petitioning Truck Connect?
We did, we talked to Anna from the town council, and then we did work
Because it's
with
very loud.
North
Loud
Star
over there.
and
Well, and Boys and Girls Club has a lot of at least they have several buses and things like that as well. So,
Yeah.
those people are together.
Yeah.
All right.
There's a lot of liability issues.
I think another point to be made is that sometimes art nonprofits, individual artists, the art community wants and needs grant money for things that are not glamorous. Like here you have something like Trails and Vistas that's bringing kids into nature to experience art. It's hands-on, over 400 kids a year, but maybe the grant money needs to be for the bus. And therefore it doesn't sound, I mean, it's not always the glamorous thing that you need the funding for, I guess is my point.
Well, what if the bus involved an interactive, one time long ago with them, we took this thing called the Mexican bus from Berkeley to San Francisco to these salsa places. It was interactive the whole way. What if the bus involved something that was some interactive element, the entire journey that involved?
I completely understand. I'm just saying sometimes within the parameters of a grant, it's the non-glamorous thing that you need the funding for.
Yeah.
And I also just want to say as a takeaway, when we all talk and hear and listen and do PR and social media around arts, not to forget the performing arts, because we tend to talk about brick and mortar galleries and an existing place and things you can touch, like a sculpture or a painting, but just to remember our local dance companies, theater companies, youth activities that are based around performing arts, not just visual arts. And may I just say one more thing in the
Yeah, it's wonderful.
That many art nonprofits that were hurting from COVID got COVID or pandemic relief if you were impacted by the impacts of the pandemic. But when your events are outdoors, there's been no relief, state or federal, related to climate change induced drought-driven wildfire and its impacts, meaning smoke. So if your events have been canceled for 2 years because of that, you still put in the same expenses.
Right.
But it's something that we haven't heard yet is there any grant money ever? I know it may not be through this particular project, but that's a pretty big, when you think about our outdoor events, and I'm not just speaking because many of you know my heart is with Trails and Vistas, but for things like Truckee Thursdays or Music in the Park or any of the things we do outside for our community that are art-related events, grant money would be wonderful as a relief or a support when things are impacted by wildfire, so et cetera.
And as a huge point of feedback that we're going to give back to California Arts Council is an enormous, for us in our communities, where's the health indice for how many days we've spent indoors because of smoke, or let alone been evacuated? And that's a huge part of our life all over the upstate region. And I'd argue along the Sierra Nevada down and coastal, I mean, it's a lot of areas, but it's a very big factor up here. So totally something that we plan to say, we're missing a key health indice here. You were gonna be next, sorry about that. You and then you.
Another angle on project ideas is actually figuring, your project is figuring out how to reach the people who need to have a voice, right? And so and I don't know exactly what that is, but so you aren't actually the one producing the art. You're figuring out how to get this information and this money to people who don't have a voice. So many people who aren't in this room right now, right? So what great project would be, let's get this information to the people who aren't in this room so that they can think of a project and apply for the money.
Did we mention the high schools at all, or any of the schools?
Yes.
In that?
Yeah.
Did
Yeah,
okay.
we had
I didn't see that.
USD and
Okay, good.
Yeah, I was actually going to say something very similar, just that, as you noted, 30% of our population is Hispanic, and therefore, this listening session is great, but it's conducted in English, and so I'm just curious if throughout the grant application process, if there will be bilingual materials or some more targeted outreach for the Latinx populations across this region. Because I think, like you said, it's one thing to say the money is there and that we want to hear from those artists, but to actually enable them by removing those barriers or providing extra resources. Just curious if that's in the plan for the application process.
It was interesting in some of the areas because it was interesting. Some people had ideas right away. In Alturas, it's a very high Latino Hispanic, and they were the community, and they were so excited that they wanted to help set up the whole infrastructure for this community that's there to do their own mural with what they, it wasn't a mural, but it was entirely about mobilizing. But it was this, anyway, it was really beautiful to watch
So here's a question that ties in with this. What is the application window? So for instance, could an initial project be commissioning several artists to do postcard series and posters and things like that that are specifically in Spanish? And to be able to distribute those, get those out there and spread the word that there's this money available, we're trying to build these programs, please get involved, this is how. And so maybe that can be an initial project that would be eligible for grant funding because it is addressing an issue, it's engaging artists, it's paying the artists to do this. And then, but how wide is the application window? So does that even work?
Well, as you said, the guidelines come out in early spring. Eliza, do you want to speak to this? Did you capture the question about
Yes.
how outreach? Okay.
Yes, I did. I mean, literally, I so encourage, especially in the eastern part of our county where the demographics look a little different, and it's so obvious, like we can't possibly ignore the really high prevalence of Latino demographics. So how can we reach this community? Sierra Community House would be a marvelous place to start, but there are other community resources that I'm sure we're missing. Katrina, is it okay if I just speak for just a tiny moment about the idea of intergenerational learning versus formal education, especially because we know we got. Did I hear that we have educators in the room?
Yeah.
So California Arts Council has many grants. It's amazing, actually. It's it has a cachet of different, very specific opportunities for formal education programs that can take place, that fund programs in schools. This isn't one of them. However, it is written into California Arts Council's grant guidelines for us as an administering organization that it wants to see intergenerational learning as part, in some of the projects that we fund. And this is where education becomes a community-led, culturally grounding kind of initiative. And this is so it is education, but it's in the community. What does that look like? An example would be where Nevada County Arts Council recently partnered with SWEP, Sierra Watershed Education Partnerships, to run the education arm of Forest Fire, which was our big creative placemaking project that we did with Truckee Parks and Rec. And it's just come down, and I'm sure that many of you have seen it. It was amazing, and we really wanted to include education, but we didn't necessarily want that only to mean that it was in the classroom. So lots of field stuff going on, lots of work with Sarah, who's in the room, who led incredible field trips and created site-specific work with these kids that will now be permanent. It's gorgeous. So what kind of wisdom can be shared between the generations in any of these projects? be thinking about it. I feel very excited and very warm about this.